board members should have received the agenda and the packet via email. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll roll forward. How about conflicts of interest for any items that are on the agenda? Heard no conflicts of interest. Just in time, we have another visitor.
Uh-oh.
You want, there's a sheet there to go ahead and sign in on, please. So do we have any visitor or public comments today?
I'm Gail Popak, and I live in Hayden. And I have a couple questions for urban renewal. Number one, where would I go get an expense and revenue report for the urban renewal money? And does the urban renewal money come into the city first and then go to you guys? Or how exactly does that work?
I can answer those questions.
Okay.
So the expense, the revenues, the budget is posted on our website.
Okay.
Budget is posted. Last year's budget's on the website, correct?
I don't think I've got this year's on the website yet.
But last year's is. But this
Sure.
year's,
Is the current year up on the website?
No,
no, but last year's is on the website.
I can get her.
Okay.
But a revenue and expense report, you know, the budget's one thing, but how it was spent and.
Are our financials available on the website, or is that a, okay, so
That's
that is a public
Public
information request.
Okay,
So you can send a public information request to Rob Wright, who is our executive director. So go to the website and the contact is there, and send him an email about a public information request for the data that you're asking for, and you can send it to you.
okay.
And then you asked about where urban renewal funds
Yeah,
come from.
Yeah, now urban renewal, I understand where they come from. Do they come into the city? They come directly to urban renewal?
The urban renewal monies that we receive comes directly from Cooney County.
Right.
So it's the same way that the city gets its tax revenue from taxpayers is through Cooney County.
And then, but it comes directly to urban renewal. It
Directly
never
to the-
passes through the city.
That's correct.
Okay, so, who determines the expenditures from urban renewal?
Annually, this board passes a budget.
Budget?
It's a three-step process. We have, or two or three-step process. We have a draft budget, then we review it, then we put it up for public comment and pass it.
Okay, and you all are volunteers or elected officials? I don't remember voting.
I'm an elected official.
I know who you are.
Oh.
Matt, just the same as
Matt,
every one of us.
that's me, right?
Matt, just the same as every one of us, is appointed by the mayor and approved by
Okay,
the
appointed by
council.
the mayor and approved by the council. Do the expenditures ever go to the council?
No, the
Or
urban
approval?
renewal agency is a separate entity under Idaho State Code.
Okay. Okay, but I'm still gonna sit in this.
Hold on one second.
You can get your information right now.
Yeah, good.
So you can just send me an email.
Okay,
at that email.
okay,
Thank
thank you, Rob.
Thank you, and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah.
Okay, any other visitor or public comments? Okay, so everybody received the consent calendar by email. All the items on the consent calendar are action items. Are there any questions regarding the minutes, bills, or financial reports? Any comments? Okay, hearing no comments or questions, I would ask that a motion be made to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Thank you, Steve, and a second by Mike there. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Okay, the consent calendar is passed as presented. Alan, our new business is, or excuse me, our continuing business is to talk about potential city projects within the district.
I have some deals up, I can put up on the screen, but I don't know if we can share them or not. It'd be nice to have other people not in the room can.
Only person that's not in the room is Pete. So,
That's an important person.
he is an important person.
Which one do you want?
This, either one, I'll just, sewer.
Yeah.
I'm gonna kind of break these out, because that's how these drawings are. We put together, or Rob put together a list. Mine's huge, because Rob knows I can't see. And those are projects that are in the district or partially in the district. They kind of fall in the district. So, they're not prioritized, they're not, I'm just gonna go over and point them out to you so you know what they are, so you just, and then real quick, and then I'll talk about the 2 or 3 projects that the city would be interested in requesting, you know, as a priority project from this board, so. And so this is our CIP for sewer, so I'm just gonna go through the sewer ones. You can see over there type, it says transportation, sewer. We'll come back to transportation ones. So, the first one there is H2 piping improvement. That's project 102.1. So that is 102.1. That is this force main in Honeysuckle. Runs down here. It's a force main that needs to get rebuilt.
So it starts at Government Way and extends eastward.
It actually starts at the H2 lift station in front of Walmart, goes across the highway and goes all the way to the H1 lift station.
So the piping improvements.
But the part that would be in the district would only be that part through the Government Way intersection, right? So, like I said, some of these there's a big project, but it's not a big project in the Hura's standpoint, so.
And is that because, Alan, the one that we put in, doesn't seem like very long ago, is too small, or just old and better?
There's 2,
This particular one was the inflow coming into the lift station.
oh, this is the gravity.
Yeah, and that was
I
just
saw it that way.
fixed and operational.
So it's just grown greater than was probably anticipated originally for that.
So it's a piping increase in volume in the
It's a
pipe.
capacity issue.
It's not the 2 pump stations, 2 lift stations.
The
I'm
next
gonna tell you
one,
that's a force main because gravity sewer doesn't go across the highway.
Yeah. I was gonna say, it's gotta be a force main if it's between those 2.
There's 2 force mains. The newest one is in operation. The one that was put in years ago is not, because it's broken 2 or 3 times, and that's a huge liability. So we're really operating under 1 force main when there was supposed to be 2, so it's a capacity issue. The next project's the Honeysuckle Force Main Phase 1. It's 102.2. And I'm gonna say that these may be broken. So that's probably what that is. I'd have to get in and read it down to detail, but if that's the case, this is not in the district. The next one is the Ramsey Phase 3 project. That is project 20608. This is the Ramsey Road Extension road project. This is the part that goes to RAD's property. I don't know if it's RAD or it's RAD or what they talk about it. And so that road is going in 2024, and we gotta get a sewer line in it. So that is a high priority for the city. I basically have to put that in this coming summer. Has to go in, summer of 23. So, that would be on my list of high priority for the city.
Is that a project?
It's completely in the boundary.
No, my question was, will that be primarily funded, since it's going to undeveloped commercial and then to a residential area? Is that going to be funded primarily with, if Hura is not involved in funding, with sewer impact fees? Thank you.
Which don't really have enough of for the projects we gotta get done, so that's why it's a priority.
and John, that main will also serve the light industrial property to to the east and west of that line.
So, from my standpoint, that is the one sewer project the city has that is in the district boundary that the city would love to have assistance on. How do I get to the other one, Rob? Okay, so, then we have transportation projects, and if you're looking at this summary, and it's the same really for the most part. If it starts with a 1, it's usually a higher priority than a 2, but that's only because of where we were at when we did the report, so those things can change, right, because things change rapidly. So anyway, in this, the widening Hayden Avenue, Kirkpatrick to 95, that's pretty short. That's, right here, that's just this section from 95 in front of, Maverick. Not a huge project. The next one listed there is the construction of Ramsey Road from Wyoming to Lancaster. That again is this roadway construction project. And we are, as part of that project, that was gonna be a 2-phase project in this section, and that's why this became a priority all of a sudden. They pushed the funding of this from 2027 to 2024. I wasn't worried about it. They just changed that like a month and a half ago. So now all of a sudden I've got a ton of work I gotta do before that road gets built.
And the only portion within the Hura limits is from that indicator
Basically about
to
from here
Lancaster. Yeah.
to Lancaster.
So within that parcel.
And
here in Bach.
And so there's, and I think I talked to you at one point about maybe having assistance with the right-of-way purchase on that, because I'm probably gonna fall short. We're working on those right now, and then I'm hoping construction's funded, and then I don't know until we get, we have to redo the plans, because this was 2 projects, now it's 1, so that's another thing I gotta do this year, is get the plans completely change them, make it 1 project, so that, pushing that up has created a real push on the city that we were not in a good position to, we weren't looking at funding it yet.
Where's the money come from that it got pushed out?
90%, about 93% of that project is funded by federal funds. However, it's set, and so if you go over that, the city is responsible for any, in other words, they say, the project, we're funding $7 million and we'll fund up to 93.7, I don't know the exact number, but
92.66.
there we go, 92.66. That's the most they'll fund, but they won't fund above what they granted. And so if we fall short, then we can go back and ask, but there's no guarantee we'll get it. Or if we don't, then the city's really responsible to, as part of the contract agreement that we have with them.
Do they only fund the roadway improvement construction costs, so?
They do not
city
fund any utilities.
And right-of-way
Correct.
purchases on the city?
Yeah.
Okay.
They only, it's a transportation dollars. It only funds transportation. So that's why we're trying to get the sewer done ahead of time, because the other option we have is to put the sewer project in the street project, but the city has to fund that solely, and we have to pay Dave Spaken, because it's got federal dollars in it. If we can do it on our own, we don't have to pay the Dave Spaken wages. So that's why I'm trying to get it in next year, this coming summer, so that it's already in the ground, and then the transportation will fund like adjusting manhole lids, they'll fund, minor things to adjust infrastructure, but they won't fund the installation of it.
So then the sewer, I guess that's on the other page, does that sewer line is going south, gravity south. So does it connect across Lancaster to 95?
Yeah. So, the sewer today, crosses Lancaster about here. All this comes and goes down here, crosses, goes here, comes over, and it goes, there's a really faint white line right here. I don't know if you see it.
Well, it's down below,
Right below this black line?
no, the next black line down is where it crosses.
No?
That's Odom right there, it crosses below Odom.
No, across the right here, guaranteed.
Anyway, that's the one we built with.
Yes.
And that's your funding. And so the project that, majority of this would dump into that. I also have a sewer project that's pushed up, that I've got to put sewer in all of this, but that's not in the district. So I can't get any help from the district. So I've got to fund that, and I gotta fund this lift station as all that. And that's why I say we've got about 12 million we have to come up with without this portion right here, which is new as of a couple months ago. It wasn't, wasn't on our priority list. If you went back and look at that, it's a number 2, it's not a number 1. It wasn't a priority until they funded the rest of that project.
Does the city have the 12 million?
I know we're trying to partner with some developers because we don't have it. So we're trying to partner that they'll finance it and we'll pay them back through CAT fee reimbursements. But we don't have that kind of money, capital money up front. So,
Alan, just a point, Idaho's been blessed with a lot of excess money. And I know that there's been a discussion or been a decision made by the legislature and the governor to take that money and help with infrastructure. Now, I heard it was just for bridges. Is there any money, they said we had enough money to replace the bridges that needed to be fixed around Idaho. Is there anything in there for roads that we can ask for?
we don't have any bridges, of course.
Right, I
So-
understand that.
At this point, I'm not aware of anything, and until the city gets this project built, we're probably not getting any more federal dollars.
But this is state money.
State, federal, it's federal dollars, and it goes through the state.
But this was a surplus in the state of Idaho because of the economy is so strong, we have a surplus.
Okay. Most of that's being gobbled up by ITD.
Okay, I just thought I'd ask, because it's new. and-
So ITD's got a backlog of projects, and they've done a pretty good job of grabbing all of that, except for like, I can't remember the number, it's not very big, and that's all been appropriated towards bridges.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm trying to get through this quick.
Sorry.
We don't have a lot of time. So anyway, that's a priority project for me also, because I've got to build it, we've got to fund it, we've already got agreements. Government Way Corridor Study, we already did that. That was the one that was done by a tourist that was presented just recently. Government Way Honeysuckle, add turn lanes and retime the signal, that's one we've been talking about for quite a while. And that maybe would be, if there was some way of getting a better portion into Hura's, that would be great. Government Way, Wyoming install signal and turn signals, that's pretty straightforward. There's this intersection here at Wyoming and Government Way, is going to need improvements. Same with Government Way Miles. And then Hayden Avenue from Juneau to Finucane, which is really this yellow section here for sidewalks and stuff for the schools. That's really not, I don't know that any of that's in the district, or maybe a very short section. I don't think you go down Hayden Avenue, do you?
Just a skosh,
Yeah.
Yeah, that first property on each side,
first.
second property on each side.
Government Way Dakota, that again, that's kind of a turn signal. Dakota, here. Intersection improvement.
Those are just turn lanes.
Yeah. Government Way, Wyoming to Buckles, upgrade road to 3 lanes. I don't think any of that's in the district, is it? Bob?
No, yes, some is, up to Lancaster,
Oh, it is?
I believe so.
Okay. So, Orchard Avenue between Triple Play and Government Way, install sidewalks and separate path, curb, gutter. That's just bringing that up to the city's current urban section and providing pedestrian, which is needed. We get a lot of pedestrian traffic because of the Triple Play and the hotel, and want people to walk, they wanna walk down and see what's going on. Miles Avenue from 95 to Government Way, upgrade road to three-way section. That's just the section between Government Way and Highway. Crawford Park, so these are park projects now. Crawford Park restroom, concession facility, picnic shelter, soccer field expansion. So this is a priority for the city. The city got a grant for $500,000. The project's probably is gonna, it was originally thought to be about $1 million, but that was 4 years ago. The grant finally got released. There's requirements that we put in certain things, and then I have a list of those, and we have to put them in because they're part of the grant. And then I'm afraid it's gonna push it up over what we anticipated. We haven't adopted yet. I just met with an architect last week. They're gonna get us a scope, we're gonna get started on the design, and so at some point I'm gonna have a cost to know what that is, but there's things we have to put in, like a concession, restroom, facility, walkways, parking lot, 2 major soccer fields, I think it's 4 mini soccer fields. And it's already funded in part with a state grant, and then the city will, will be funding a portion of it in May. I think we would love to get also some participation from you, from this board, if that's an option. And then, McIntyre Family Park design. That is kind of a priority. It's not maybe as big a priority as some of these other ones, but the city has entered into an agreement to move public works, including parks and streets, which is out in the park. We've purchased the buildings, we're purchasing the buildings from Lakes Highway District. And so we don't have to build them. We're gonna get those buildings for like $800,000 versus building something at the cost of $500 million. This is like a gift from whoever. And so that means that the city street department is finally going away, and the city has for years and years and years had numerous plans that have been looked at, updated to make improvements park, and they really have been held off until streets is gonna be out there. We're thinking streets is gonna be out there in the 2 to 3 year time frame. So that we want to get started on, kind of get a design started, get through the public process, find out what people want, and be ready to do something there. So that's kind of the list of stuff we've got. And I think priorities.
Could you take this list? This is great. This is exactly what we asked for, Alan. Thank you.
The priorities for me, of course, is the Ramsey Phase 3 sewer, that part north in RAD property.
Could you take and add a column to this and just prioritize?
We can.
And I think you said what they are, but I'd sure like to see it in a document so that as the Hura board members consider priorities for the Urban Renewal Agency in partnership with the city, that we know that this is number 1, and this is number 2, and this is number 3. And, if you
They're
guys
all
could
gonna
put
be
that
one when I
together.
get John.
Well, we don't have that much money.
Oh,
So Alan, one other question, the amount that we show for the budget, that's the total cost, it's not the part that would maybe Hurricane share, that's the total amount of the project.
It is, but it's also a budget number, so, it's like 3 years old in some cases, so, 2 years old anyway.
For instance, Matt,
So-
on the transportation project 101,
Right?
I think the 5.879 million, that was for that entire, project.
It is.
But only part of that project is within that.
Right, so what I'm thinking about is that we as a board are considering what Hurricane can do, it would be helpful to know how much we could fund based on the percentage of the project.
Yeah, and I would all I could do is put a swag at that at this point until we have an actual design that we can define. You know, once we get an actual design, right, we say, yeah, we're gonna build it, we're gonna do it, we have a design, I can say, okay, there's 300 feet of asphalt there's 600 foot of curb, there's the signals in it, the right turn lane is out of it, I won't, you know, you've gotta be able to actually, you almost have to have something that, plans you see here are the level we have right now. It's hard for me to put it, to break that out, other than say, looks like you're about 5% of the project.
Okay.
Right, and that would be all I could do, and I.
That'd be great.
It seems like the biggest one is that, project number 101, Ramsey Road from Wyoming Avenue. Is that your standard, the city section of the, center turn lane, and, or is that gonna be,
And on-street bike lanes,
so just what,
10-foot path on one side, 5 on the other, swales.
so just what was completed across the street in that 37-acre
Yep.
development,
A little wider.
or wider? You guys have the cost for that, so.
Well,
And it's part of the subdivision.
that just helps.
Just to, you know, to give us a, is it $1.2 million for that section or whatever, that would help
So,
us.
I mean, we could certainly do that, but I just wanna couch it with, that number is going to be really,
Yeah, no, I get it.
it's just like complete guess, right? Because it's not detailed, right? We look at this, sometimes we go, it's $1 million a mile, looks like we got 1.2 miles, that's 1.2 million. That's as much, because until you start laying it out, it's hard to. And then we try to throw a number in there that makes it a budget number instead of just a swag.
And I think that this particular project is also a project that could benefit from a district expansion. To cover the intersection improvements on Lancaster Ave.
Alan, when we have so many projects that exceed our capacity, I'd like to talk a minute about curves.
Well, curves.
As we adopt the standard of curves, we add costs to the project, we build, we accumulate wastewater, stormwater, concentrate it in one place, build a swale, and then they fail. And then we have to rebuild it again and again and again. And we happen to live in a place where ditch sections have worked for decades, generations, and we're taking them out, collecting storm and wastewater, concentrating into limited places, and then treating it kind of not very successfully. Why don't we abandon the curves when we're in relatively open space, and we have the room for ditch sections like we have used for years?
Well, ditch section technically will not meet the, won't pass the test for treatment over the aquifer. Not saying that we haven't done it for years, I'm just saying, even the highway districts now don't just put a ditch in. They actually put a swale section in on the side of the paved road, even in their urban sections, or rural sections.
So they don't do the curves, they just have the ditch, at the low places in the ditch, they put a swale.
They put a swale and they put dry wells in, just like, and then if you have driveways, you have to put culverts across them because you can't carry the water in the gutter line, so you have to carry it in the swale line. So then they have to put the culverts in, and they gotta maintain those. The others, they don't get any pedestrian, access in. And so without the pedestrian, we end up with the things we have like over here on Hayden, Maple, where the citizens are basically up in arms because there's no place for people to walk. So
So we're in this awkward spot.
we are, and
We're building these very nice, first-class, urban, big city improvements in our little village, and we don't have enough money. And so I agree that particularly where we have these 40-foot rights of way or 50 feet and 24-foot road sections, there's no place to walk. But would we be better off in not adopting such a high-performance standard? And I know it's a complicated.
That's a complicated question,
But
I don't-
I'm just advocating more improvements, not quite so nice.
right, so we wouldn't qualify for any, urban grants, for one thing. That City of Dalton Guards lost that grant because they would not put in the urban section. It was urban dollars,
So those dollars require curbs.
urban sidewalks.
And process-wise, if you guys,
Now, we build a lot of, I mean, when there's roads we have, that we don't use those dollars on, right? I don't know if that would, if we had a mixture, how that would work, right? And then I guess it's really what do you want your city to look like down the road? Do you want it to continue to look like over here with Maple and that, where there's no sidewalks and there's none of that, and there's no and it's really kind of, or do you want it to look more like, you know, here or in our newer subdivisions where, you know, we have sidewalks, we have curbs, it's got street trees, it's got amenities that look, you know, so what do you want your city to look like, right? And that's a whole other question.
I don't want it to look that way, though. The amount of time and money it takes to get it to look that way is generations. I mean, we're not gonna get to a curbed city for,
I think that you're not gonna see that until parts of the city start to redevelop, which could be a while.
We have.
We still got a lot of land, right?
We do have provisions in our code that triggers a developer to put in the frontage improvements if they don't exist. And it's not redoing half the road, it's.
that from, I want to be polite about this, but this is my point. Maybe my point wasn't articulate enough. We have this horrendous problem between what people can afford and what houses cost. So if we push the money off to the developer, it's still dollars being spent, which get paid for by the ultimate consumer, by the homeowner. And so we didn't save any money. We spent a lot of design money, which most homeowners don't have any access to those decisions. And what I'm trying to highlight to us all is that as we adopt standards with noble objectives, urban street sections, we drive the cost up. And the frustration with the difference between whatever affordable housing is, and I don't like to use that term, is caused by those of us who are partially on the government side, making the projects more expensive.
But I'm gonna say that isn't the cost that's gone up escalatory. Cost of a curb hasn't gone up escalatory, the cost of a road hasn't gone up escalatory, cost of a sidewalk, price of land has gone up. And that's due to the fact that developers are still able to charge that rate and sell it. The market's driving, the market's driving that. I think the market's driving those costs more so than the improvements.
But Alan, in the time that I've known you, curbs have gone from $4 a foot to $8 or 10.
I was gonna say,
Or what is it, 16 now, John, I'm even behind. And so.
I was gonna say, well, I don't remember 4, but okay, I think I remember 12. You might
I remember 4.
You might remember 4. Anyway, I don't, that's a whole different topic, really, I mean,
It is, but the time for us to address the whole issue, and it's not our decision, so I'm beating my gums here, but you're in the middle of that discussion, and curbs and sidewalks are good, but in the realm of all the things that we ought to be doing for safety, signals, and more turn lanes, and so we don't get more public frustration about traffic becoming impossible in our little town, we've got to build capacity. And when it's expensive, there's a trade-off between how nice is good enough and how nice is the urban standard.
And
So that's my point.
if you're providing, and there's a trade-off there too, Steve, and I don't know where it's at, because I haven't looked at it. We've got curbs, we've got setbacks to obstructions of 2 feet. If we don't have curbs, we've got setbacks to obstructions 8 feet. So your utility poles have to go out farther. There's other things that get impacted one way or the other, and I don't know, right? And it's a change in the look, and that's really, I don't know that that's something the city is even I mean, it's never been brought up to me as a discussion point till right now. I should have known you were
And that's a policy discussion
for the city.
for the city council. They have to
City
decide.
council and the planning commission.
Yeah, they need to decide whether or not they wanna direct their transportation, planners to identify different.
How do we get back to the regular? What do you want? Oh, I just taken this off of the screen.
Any other questions for Alan?
No, thank you, Alan.
Thank you,
So
Alan.
I took away just, that you'd like me to take this and add to it,
Priorities.
maybe try to break out some cost
That would be really.
figures that we'll know is kind of pie in the sky.
Is there any life to the discussion about the, I think it's the Hanson parcel
Well, that's for us to talk about.
over here on Maple?
That's, they don't have any input on that because that would be a Hura expansion of our district, which is where I'm gonna go next once we're done talking.
Well, but then, well, if you expand your district, yeah, it's layout of the district.
My question is, outside of the Hura considerations that John's alluding to, there was talk about that parcel as a park, and I'm just asking, is that still
Yes.
under consideration, or
Yes,
is
it
it
is.
died?
Yeah. It's still something the city very much would like to do. It's, kind of a financial issue there.
Sure.
They want fair market value, which I can't blame them for, and that's a big piece of property. What land
And
costs?
my impression is it's still one of the few remaining parcels, if not the remaining parcel of that size.
City was really trying to see if we could just buy, at one point, see if we could buy 3, 4, 5 acres. And they don't want to, they
It's a 10-acre parcel.
don't really wanna break it up.
Okay.
So, but it's still something the city desires, absolutely. From staff standpoint, that's our understanding from what's coming down.
Thank you, Alan. So kind of segueing into what Steve was bringing up, beyond these priorities that Alan has identified for us in sewer, transportation, and parks, with our workshop with the city, was it last month or was it July? No, it's just roaring by, it must have been July, when we did our workshop. There were some other things that were talked about, and I just kind of wanted to make a list of, have all the board members kind of throw out what they think priorities are for Hura, what we should be looking at in terms of the next, we have 6 years after the end of this year. We have 6 years to go ahead with this district in place and to reinvest these dollars into our community. So, starting with Steve's suggestion, potential of Hanson Park, which in terms of challenges requires expansion of the district. What else did you guys take away from that meeting?
No more land on Sunville, we could do a small expansion of the district.
And that's in the sewer, transportation, parks list that Alan just presented to us. So outside of what the city is presenting.
Also somehow interrelated with the senior citizens center. That's one where I had mentioned there's $500,000 of grant money that I think is available for the asking for a combination senior center, community center, senior center.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, the money that came for Crawford Park, isn't that a Idaho State Parks and Recreation
It
grant?
is.
And you're talking about the, where do those come from, the senior
They
center?
are HUD dollars that come through the state.
Community Development,
That sounds right, like the right names, yeah.
through Commerce, I think, isn't it?
Comes through Commerce.
Yeah, so it comes through Commerce.
And there's $7 or $8 million a year, of which like $3 million or something are allocated to cities for community center type stuff. And the other dollars go to water and sewer projects. talked to Commerce about sewer dollars from these HUD projects?
Yeah, we got, I think, we tried to figure out how to make that work, and I'm not positive I got this right, Steve, but as I recall, our mean income in the city of Hayden is too high to qualify.
That could be true.
That's what I recall.
That could be true.
Gosh,
And that might also affect what I'm saying about the senior center, community center grants, because I think there is a low to middle income criteria in those dollars.
I think the only way that might help is if they let you tie it to the people getting the benefit. Cause that may lower that number, I don't know.
Good point, thank you.
Is there somebody in the city that actively looks at grant opportunities? So that's a question where probably Sandy knows that.
Abby's kinda got her eye out and ear out. A lot of the
She
time.
handles most of them for us,
Maybe we
or
should-
Susie has done some.
It'd be interesting just to look at that opportunity for the community center and see if there are some strings on it. What other priorities do we have?
Well, Alan mentioned it, I think, expanding the park now that, the other stuff is moving should certainly be one.
And
Which part?
McIntyre Park, excuse me.
Oh, right here.
Yeah.
There's a video that was produced by an architect, an animation of changing McIntyre Family Park and expanding it out to the Public Works Building. And it showed what it would look like with two different parking options. Now, I just wanna throw out the thought that, again, I wanna go back to the Owl Cafe, because between the Owl Cafe and the property we own on Orchard and the whatever's gonna happen with the Public Works Building, it creates an opportunity, like at the last Association of Idaho Cities meeting I went to, that said, you wanna do something in your city that identifies your city. Each city, has some kind of identifiable asset, and I think something like combining those properties and doing, senior center or a park or something that's unique to Hayden brings it to the center of Hayden and identifies as Hayden as being, whatever that definition is. And so I think we need to, if we could, maybe take a look at, if you wanna see that video, Brett has it, and get some thoughts on it. I just open that up for
What
discussion.
did the architect's proposal do with the baseball field?
Here we go. Go away.
And is that, like we had a big hullabaloo about the baseball field down in Coeur d'Alene, and in the end, it got moved and people seem to like the park.
And I also think if we're talking about expanding the district, and within that realm, I mean, if we're expanding a district, there's, I think, some property available right here that is not in the district, that if the district is expanded, would be something we could take a look at. You'll think.
What buildings does Public Works have over there? Are they just equipment sheds or?
They're metal buildings.
Okay.
They're, pretty dated.
I was gonna say at least 40 years old.
Not much life left in
Been a long
them
time
then?
since it built some all those tennis courts.
There's not much life for, probably to add to this campus, right?
Yeah, nothing that can be converted into a community center.
No,
No.
Far from.
I like that you just said community center rather than senior center, because I think if we're going to invest in something, it has to benefit all of the citizens in the city of Hayden, and certainly, just as the city has underwritten the senior center for, gosh, I don't know how many years, providing that place where the senior center could also utilize community facilities, I think is in the better interest of taxpayers or the citizens.
I think we need a meeting place, community center-like thing, and it has to have a parking lot that goes with it. I mean, the parking lot is as expensive as the building probably because of the scale. Is the city park, McIntyre Park, plus the baseball field, plus the shop site, big enough for a community center and associated parking?
No. I think we need to, yeah, I mean, if we're serious about that, then you start talking to a design team and ask them to scale what the community center looks like. I mean, how big is a community center? You know, are we talking 10,000 square feet? Are we talking 5,000 square feet? You know, how many people would you envision using it? I mean, those questions have to be answered so we can go ahead and define scale on it.
Brett also has a preliminary design of a campus, with buildings and a layout, with the possibility that he could, maybe we could take a look at it, gives us ideas. I've seen it a couple of times. I don't know that it included a senior center, but we did have, I believe, Gordon Longwell and Corey Trapp did a preliminary community center building as a concept, basic concept. So we also have that. Just some thoughts about where we could go.
I don't think any of the stuff I've seen on McIntyre Park had a community center
I think you guys were
theme
relocating
in it.
facilities over there and everything originally. If I remember correctly, the one we looked at 2 or 3 years
Didn't
ago.
it have an amphitheater?
It had like an amphitheater and it did have parking over on that side, so that city hall parking isn't conflicting with, you know, parking. But it doesn't mean it can't be done, I'm just saying I don't think that has actually been, I haven't seen a document that had that in it as part of this campus, is what I'm sharing. Not saying it can't be done, sharing, I don't know if it's been looked at yet. From the city standpoint, anyway.
And I think when we purchased the 58 East Orchard property, I think Brett brought in that sketch that Matt was referring to, that had a building with associated parking on that property, and then I think it tied into whatever, I guess whatever you could dream, you know, for, the property that fronted Government Way.
If we're really serious about a community center, John, you're right, I think, on the planning cycle. It probably needs to be on a parcel big enough that our successors can expand it. And as you think forward, why the city's gonna be lined up, boundaried by the Hura Road, 6-lane, whatever it's gonna be. And if that comes to be, and it surprises me, but I continue to hear a lot of really talk about that's being practical. By finding a site for a community center building that's somewhat central is gonna be challenging. And this park site may not be big enough, the site over by where we have the Orchard property and the Owl Cafe is probably not big enough. But Matt's concept of having something that is some sort of emblematic of the city's identity is an interesting concept. The city of Pocatello built a substantial kind of a convention meeting thing. And there were hotels popped up around it, and it's divisible into bigger rooms and smaller rooms. Not as nice, of course, as the Portland Resort, but it had some sort of a way to divide big open space into 6 smaller spaces. And it's made a pretty good sized difference, I think, in the kinds of events that happen in Pocatello. Is there anything else like it?
Well, I think the first step is planning, because we are, Pocatello's 76,000 people. And we're not Coeur d'Alene or Post Falls, we're the city of Hayden. And, I mean, a 14,000 population, how many people are going to actively use a community center in any given day? I think if the city if we as a Hura board are committed to saying we want to partner with the city on a community center, we should send that message to the city and have them agree that it is a priority for the city as well, and then we can talk about engaging a consultant to right size it for the city of Hayden. So that's what I would suggest, is that if this is a priority, something that, and we know how long, Steve and I being in the development and building business, know how long it takes to get things to go to fruition. If a community center that can also support our senior center is a priority for us, then I think this board needs to say that to the city council and pass that message on, and look for them to confirm that it is a priority for themselves. And then we can say, okay, let's go ahead and get some proposals for planning, start that process.
I think there may be some larger undeveloped parcels that are in the district. Zoning wise, I don't know. It would match, but thinking that it might. And I'm thinking on the west side of 95, south of 8,
Well,
north of,
right across the street from what used to be the Holiday Inn, it's called something else now, and the play park is a pretty good sized parcel that Del Kerr owns. And we've talked about that parcel in the context of the frontage road on the west side of 95. But if we did a community center on, and I think that's maybe 15 acres, because there's some adjacent parcels to the west. It's close to where there's a hotel. It's close to the Government Way part of the existing community. It's one of the few remaining parcels of enough space. Well, there's some things to talk about, think about, and you're right, if we could fund some planning efforts, that might help.
Yeah, so I mean, if somebody wants to make a motion that Hura is interested in supporting the city and the development of a community center, we could go forward with this, and that way the city has something concrete to act on, and can go ahead and get proposals for us for planners and get the process started.
I like that. I move we undertake a planning project for community center.
Is there a second from the board?
I'll second.
Thank you, Colin. Any further discussion? Great. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. So if you guys would share that with the city council, Matt, if you would run that, maybe help present that to the council that I'm sure Roger will be excited because he's been carrying that torch for years.
Sure.
So,
Sorry, separate from that, I just wanted to say, Alan brought us some pretty good ideas. I mean, I would be in favor of his list of priorities to the extent that we have the funds and can do it out of the park, doing the road and the sewer, if we can help with that, I would be in favor of that.
I agree as well. That's why I asked him to come back with, to prioritize the list, because there's, I don't know how many millions of dollars on there. And as Matt recommended, on the ones that are partially within the boundary, if we can just have an idea that our piece of it could be $1 million, then we could go ahead and take action on those as well. So that was where I was going with that.
So could we produce, John or Rob, for our next discussion, a piece of paper that kind of says at the top, we have the remaining time of the district. We could spend whatever that forecast is. I think we talked about it 1 or 2 meetings ago, is $10 million.
Yep.
And as we begin to get a priority list on public works projects, and a priority list on parks, and the idea of a community center, it may begin to come together as to how those pieces fit. projects around in terms of priority, but we know that here's how much money there is and here's our want list. And we should ask the council for some feedback about their wish list as well. So we don't find ourselves without some discussion about the sequence of projects.
Yeah, I think once we get the priority list from Alan's team and, we create this overall priority list, that's why I'm sitting there taking a lot of notes, is I picture a spreadsheet with different priorities, that we can all agree on, then we also, none of which requires the city to, approve the expenditures, but it sure seems like it's the right thing to do to team up and go forward and make sure we're not pushing forward a project that is not at the highest, at the same level of importance as the city. I'd like to kind of keep going. We've got a lot of work yet to do today. So if everybody's okay with the progress we made today on this item, I'm gonna leave it on the agenda for next month as well, so that we can continue to go forward with the information we get from Alan's team. Rolling into new business. Pete, are you still on?
Yes, I am.
Great, so we're new business, commissioner disclosure letters. If you would go ahead and walk us through that, Pete, please.
Yeah, this is something we do in Post Falls, and it's an annual deal to disclose any interest you have in the district as far as ownership of property or ownership of an interest in a business that owns property. The statute 50-2017, it doesn't prohibit ownership of property in the district, but it does prohibit actions affecting such property. So this is a way for me to keep an eye on any interests or potential interests and advise the commissioners accordingly, whether or not they need to recuse themselves. But this is the biggest part of the deal. Disclosing an interest is, the biggest part of the game, because that's when you can really get in trouble if you don't disclose. So disclosure is key, and then I can look and see and keep an eye on if anything that comes before the commission would affect that property. So.
And that disclosure letter was included in your packet. I think we'd like to have those back to Rob here prior to the end of the month, I think, because that should be good. So we take a look at it. Randy, Mike, you guys are new to the board. We filled these out last year. We did these disclosures. Pete, if there's no change in any of the items, do you need to complete the disclosure again, or do you need to, or can you just say no change from prior report?
If you could just note on the letter, no change from prior report.
Right, thank you.
The only difference on the new letter versus the old is
Oh, it's
the mayor.
different mayor. Thanks, Pete. Anybody have any questions for Pete about what the disclosure letters are, or about ownership of property in the district? Okay, well, let's roll to our next new business item. It says engage executive director. We're going to need to go into executive session per Idaho Code 74-206. 1A, to consider hiring a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent, wherein the respective qualities of the individuals are to be evaluated in order to fill a particular vacancy or need. So at this point, Pete, do we have to take a motion to go into executive session?
Yes, and you need a roll call vote.
Okay, I would ask for a motion to go into executive session. Thank you, Randy. And a second from Matt.
we need, the motion needs to state the statutory subsection, which is 74-2061A.
I move that under Idaho Code 74-2061A, we move to an executive session.
Okay.
And the second is Matt Roeder. The motion was made by Randy McIntyre. Roll call vote, please, Sandy.
John Young,
Yes.
Steve Meyer,
Yes.
Colin Meehan,
Yes.
Michael Thayer,
Yes.
Randy McIntyre,
Yes.
and Matt Roder.
Yes.
Visitors, I apologize, but as an executive session, this is closed to the public.
Kicked out, yeah.